I'm looking at the camera.
I know. I keep talking to you.
I know. So. I'm like, hi. I don't think I look very much over there, but hey, okay.
How do you know how to talk to your child about abuse and things that can happen to children and to people in the world? It's a tough topic, and I'd love to hear what you share. This is Jen Devine from superstarhealtheducation.com, and I'm Cathy Bartulli from theintimacydojo.com. And there's estimates all over the place from 1/3 to 1 in 4 people that have some kind of negative sexual experience by the time they're 18. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of incidents of abuse, rape, assault, and while it's a really tough subject, I think it would be important to be able to talk to kids so that they know that they're not just shocked and frozen if someone did approach them, or if their friend brought it up, or if something happened to them. Like, how do you talk to them about that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of those subjects where so much of what we do as sex educators is normalizing things, and this is one of those subjects I wish I didn't have to normalize. I dream of a day where that kind of assault and non-consent and boundary violations don't happen. That being said, letting kids know that it is not that uncommon, and if someone has experienced something, well, first of all, that their body is their own, and they get to decide who touches it, and teaching that lesson from it's a young age, giving kids actual choice to say yes or no to things along the way. If someone then hasn't gotten those messages and has been in the place of being a person who has experienced trauma, abuse, assault, and often this happens, sadly, inside of families is the most common place that happens. It's not the random stranger on the street.
The stranger danger is not actually
true. It's actually people we know and often trust, and that can normalizing that it can be confusing, because sometimes the conflict of a person being a loving person but also doing things that feel violating and boundary violating. So there can be confusion in honoring that and saying this can be hard and a little confusing, because there also can be pleasure, and that also can be confusing in the mix.
I had orgasms when I was abused as a child, and it was so, I didn't actually know what was happening. I was so confused. Right.
And so letting a person know that also is normal, and that
it's like the doctor taps you on the knee for the reflex, your knee moves. People touch you in certain ways that
the body responds, and it may be a protective mechanism in those cases in some ways. And I always say, letting a person know that it is so important, if those things have ever happened, to find somebody they can tell, somebody they can talk to. If the situation is happening in the moment, which I always assume in a classroom or with parents that I'm talking to, or whatever community group I'm working with, because the incidences are so high, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, 7 out of 8, right? Like, depending on who you talk to.
And how they measure.
Just to assume that is happening for someone in that place. What are the strategies they might need to use while it is currently happening? So, trying to stay away from that person and not spend time in a place where they can have access to you. Finding people who are safeties so that they mitigate that behavior from happening, so you're not spending time alone. Getting away from that person. Practicing using your words and saying no. And or if in the moment, if a person is able to do so, physically getting away or moving away or fighting back.
If it feels safe.
If it feels safe. Now that may not always be. Sometimes safety, the strategy is to sadly have to put up with that, because it would be more dangerous to fight. So that you have to talk about that carefully and strategize. So finding a way to, in some way, separate, move away, say no, process about it with someone. Journal sometimes is the first thing. Sometimes a pet is the first person we tell. Sometimes it's a trusted adult outside of our family, or somebody in our family we can go to. Sometimes it's a friend we confide in. So finding a way to tell somehow, and tell over and over again until someone believes you, because sometimes when you're a little kid, people don't always believe the stories that you tell. So knowing that the truth of your story is important to tell, and letting somebody know that if they say, oh, that's probably not really what Uncle Bob meant, or whatever it is, or Aunt Sally, or whoever, just keep telling somebody until they trust you and they promise to get you help.
I think it's also important to normalize, at least share that sometimes it's really hard to talk about this. There could be the fear that they'll be angry, the fear that it'll ruin the family or tear
lose a
people apart.
Relationship that you actually do care about in some way. All those things are
modeling
challenging.
that people are complex and they get to have good sides and bad sides and things they like and don't like. That I think that can sometimes help.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I also try not to demonize or shame the person who's doing the behavior to someone else without their permission, because of the complexity of relationship, and also because that person, like, I always try to put in the context that they probably need help too.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of help out there for people.
They may be doing
position.
something that happened to them, and they don't really understand the complexity of why that is something they're doing also to someone else, or how it could be harmful. So, trying not to demonize the person who might be causing the abuse in that situation.
But also not letting them have access to continue it.
Yeah. But if I'm trying to encourage people to disclose in a classroom, I try not to make it sound like that person is going to be punished or get in trouble or like
banished from the world.
That's a bigger question. The bigger question is first let somebody know, and then there's way more complicated decisions to make about what happens later. But that person probably also needs some help.
Yeah.
And so I put it in that context. And my anonymous question box, the questions that I get sometimes that has been the first place of disclosure, and it's anonymous, but that's the first step. So sometimes people anonymously tell someone, they write a note and they put it somewhere and they say, someone's doing something to me that I don't like, and this is what it is, and I can't tell you my name yet. So who might that be? Who do you tell at school? Who are the trusted adults? Is it people at your church? Is it people at your mosque? Is it people in your home? Is it people in your neighborhood? Is it someone at your school? Are you a grown-up? Do you have an awesome therapist? Do you, who are the folks you do talk to about it?
Yeah, I think it's a really tough topic, and at least broaching it and letting people know that you're willing to talk about it, because I know when I was going through the abuse, I didn't think there was anyone I didn't see anyone to tell. Nobody talked about it.
And also sometimes abusers will make sure you are told that you cannot tell.
Something
it's
bad
special
will happen
or secret or it's bad and you can't talk about it. So there's strategies that people use to keep you quiet.
Yeah. So, if you suspect something's going on, I encourage you to get help. Find an expert that can help you talk through these things and help. There's some really amazing therapists out there, or people at churches or whatever that could help guide you through the process.
I'm curious, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but I'm curious, where did you disclose, or what was it that let you put voice to your experience?
It was years later, actually. I did try to say once when I was 5 that something was happening, and in my mind I was very clear about what I was saying, but again, I don't know what.
Right, a 5-year-old, what is it that you say?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. My mom was not happy. I remember her not being happy with the conversation, but I'm not sure what she understood, and she doesn't remember it now when we talked about it. But I was 21, 22, and I went to therapy because I was so depressed and struggling with so much shame. I thought all the abuse was my fault, and I was just carrying this big load of shame, and I went to a therapist and started finally releasing some of the shame and realizing that it wasn't actually my fault, but it was a journey, it was a process.
That's an important point to make too for kids. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. When somebody who has more power than you is doing something to you, it's not your fault.
Yeah, and it's hard, especially my abuser told me that it was my fault as a way to keep things quiet. Yeah, it was a great strategy, because I was like, oh crap, I'm making this adult do this horrible thing. I'm a bad person, and I carried that for a long time. So I think
thanks for sharing that.
Oh sure, if it would help one person, it's worth sharing, because
totally.
There's a lot of people out there struggling with this, and I think the more we can talk about it, it gives room for people to say, hey, I need help.
Definitely.
So
thanks for sharing and asking that question.
Yeah, thanks for talking about such a difficult topic, and thank you for being here and listening to this, because it does make a difference. When we start hearing it, our brain has words and pathways to talk about things in a different way, and that could be a world of difference to people around you.